Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Bobo, Mango, and Donovan's Void. Today, we're doing our very first porno. We're moving off of Patreon onto Pornhub. It's been a rainy 2 weeks in Cape Town, so we're filming in bed. And if this escalates to sex, then it is what it is. What are we talking about today?
I really wanted to talk about delusion and this new, and listen, I didn't come up with the name, female delusional calculator and male reality calculator. But yeah, I just want to talk about delusion generally. I think it's like a really interesting thing that's worth getting to the bottom of.
Yeah, you know? Describe this calculator. I vaguely seen it on TikTok, the app I refuse to go on now.
Yes.
Please describe to me and Mango what this demonry is.
Right. So what happens is a incel with early male pattern baldness walks up to a woman who is minding her own business.
Yes.
And asks her how tall her ideal mate is. Yeah. And then she'll usually say something, well, it just has to be taller than me. And then they'll ask if they have any racial preferences, and then they'll pretend to not.
Yeah. They always do. They always do that.
And then they'll ask the woman how much money they would like their ideal partner to make. Yeah. And then at the end of it is spat out a number that calculates your delusion. Yeah. So it basically tells you, using US Census data, what is the likelihood that you will meet your ideal partner.
Interesting.
And it seems to revolve around this just obsession that I think both men and women have of like pointing out delusion in the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Almost as in a desperate plea to be like, settle for me. See, I'm not so bad. You're delusional.
Yeah.
And it's really fucking dark, man. It's just like really symptomatic of like a greater problem in society. But yeah, I wanted to get your opinion on delusion generally. Are we too delusional? Are we not delusional enough?
Yeah.
How delusional should you be in your romantic relationships or with what you expect from people? And what's too much? So what are your thoughts? Are we too delusional?
Are we too delusional? You know, we went to a party 2 days ago. In Cape Town, and it was a party of people in their people in their late 20s and early 30s. Yeah. And I just thought it was really interesting because I don't really go to parties. I'm a bit too awkward for them.
Yeah.
But now, I haven't gone to a party in like a while, maybe a couple of years. And now that we go to this party, I find it so fascinating that the men are on one side of the room and all the women are on one side. And I'm like, when did this happen? Yeah. Because back in my day, when I went out, there was a lot of people used to go out with the intention of meeting someone to either date or fuck. You're going out to meet your husband or your one night stand. And it seems that the intention is still there, but people are like chronically awkward. Beyond delusion, I think there is an even deeper problem, which is just an inability to engage with the sex that you're interested in. It's like flirting has ended. Yeah. I don't see people flirting anymore when I go out. Do you think the average person who is seeking a mate is delusional? Are we aiming too high? Or are we aiming too low?
For a long time, when people would ask me for any kind of dating advice, my advice would always be like, just become okay with yourself. Become okay alone. Learn how to sit with yourself alone. Learn how to not be needy. Because being needy is very unattractive. And for the first time in my life, I think that I'm completely wrong. I think people have actually become far too comfortable alone. They've become far too hesitant to appear needy and something about like post-COVID life has made people so enthusiastic about their own loneliness and they're terrified of other people. And for the first time ever, I just think the advice I was giving was actually terrible. I think people are far too comfortable alone. need someone, show interest in someone, give a fuck. Like actually pursue someone, show someone that you really want. The deep level of comfort that we've all reached with ourselves has actually just kind of halted and grinded society to just a complete halt. You know, and I saw that at that party where it's like, yeah, you just have all the men on this side and all the women on the other side, and there's no commingling, there's no attempt, there's no one shooting their shot, a lot of men will look back and like blame the Me Too movement, right? They'll go like, oh, well, you guys made us terrified of, but I think what's really happened is that women no longer really have any interest in the male gaze from a male body. They actually only are interested in the male gaze from women. You know, they don't actually want a man to come up to them and say like, oh, you look really nice in that dress. Yeah. They want to dress or, you know, be perceived as traditionally attractive from the male gaze. Yeah. But they only really want the compliments from women. And I think deep down, really unaware men will come up to women and pretend as if it's the 1980s and be like, hey, can I buy you a drink? Yeah. But the smarter men, like myself included, have just clocked that, hey, you guys don't want us to talk to you. You don't want us to approach you. You don't want us to offer to buy you a drink. We've almost like fumbled too much to really get back in your good graces. And the only way to actually approach a woman in 2023 is to be recommended by her friend. It's like the actual only way. No, honestly, like you almost have to go through this screening process of another woman that she actually trusts, she actually deems as a valid and respectable human being. Have her vouch for you, like a fucking job interview process. And then because this almost direct woman to man relationship that used to be able to exist of I'm approaching you at a bar, I'm approaching you at a party, that is now not only cringe, but potentially like rude. And, you know, the only thing I could think to do is what I was telling you the other day. If I was single, is approach a woman and be like, hey, here's $60. Please don't call the police on me. Can I talk to you for a little bit? You know, because it's almost like as a man, you have to come like bearing a gift in order to just get the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. You know, because quite honestly, I get it. Men are terrifying. And I think women are done putting up with how terrifying just dealing with strange men are. And now there needs to be a vetting process. That could be an app. That could be a friend. That could be... But like the days of me just approaching you at a bar and offering to buy you a drink and complimenting you on the way you look tonight, that's done. Yeah. And we should accept that and probably move on. Because that's official. I don't know if you want to blame it on whatever you want to blame it on. It's just that is over, and we do have to do something else now. And apps aren't it, and whatever. But we're gonna actually grind society to a complete halt if this thing keeps going. You know, what are your thoughts?
I think what you said about women no longer caring about the male gaze is very interesting. I think what's actually happened with that, and this has been something that's been going on for a while. Honestly, probably since the inception of patriarchy, is that we've so deeply internalized the male gaze that we actually no longer need it from men.
Exactly.
So we can actually bypass the male gaze from within a male body. Yes. And just get it from another woman because we all have internalized the male gaze inside of each other.
And it's so much less scary because it's like this person isn't going to assault me. This person isn't going to... I'd much rather the male gaze from a woman than the male gaze from a man, because the male gaze from a man could take me to some dark place. It's so much better. You guys should get all the satisfaction of being validated by the male gaze without any of the fear and anxiety of dealing with men.
I also think, you know, even when I think about myself and my own evolution with beauty and my own relationship with beauty, I find the principal difference between the male gaze and the woman gaze, I hate the word female, is that men look at women, but we look at ourselves through the men that look at us. Yeah. So we actually no longer need you. I think what's happening to patriarchy as a whole is that a lot of the roles that men used to fill, we don't really need you guys to fill them anymore. Like just on a practical, logistical level, there's meat in the supermarket, so we no longer need you guys to go out and hunt animals. You know, there's jobs for women now, so we no longer need you guys to be the sole providers of the household. And the final step is that we've now internalized your gaze, so we no longer need you guys to look at us to validate us.
Yeah.
We can look at each other, we can look at ourselves, but still with your gaze embedded into us. And that's an interesting transition, because I think that also causes a sexual confusion where I feel like now that being gay is socially accepted in most places, for the most part, or a lot more than it used to be, I think a lot of women are genuinely considering, like, should I bother dating men at all if I genuinely find women to be hot and soft and attractive and, like, really, like, actual plausible romantic characters?
Yeah.
And I also think people are questioning the validity of romanticism altogether.
Yeah.
I think we've seen the destruction that romantic love has caused. And to be fair, I don't think that that's the fault of romanticism as a whole. I think that is the fault of living in a culture that doesn't prioritize teaching us how to love. But I think so many people have been damaged by love, or we've watched our parents be damaged by love. If you're a woman, you've watched your mom be damaged by her relationship with your father or her boyfriend or her husband. And we're just having a cultural moment where we're all just asking ourselves, well, is this even worth it? Is this a worthwhile pursuit?
It's interesting that you said that, like, you know, women view each other as just so much more viable as far as this is a serious person. I can have a real serious emotional connection with.
Yeah.
Something I find in my late 20s, now going on into my 30s, is that no man is more attractive to women than a man that already has a girlfriend. Because they look at you like, oh, you're serious. Like, you actually know how to. And that's sort of what you're saying, where it's not even so much of that they're not even physically attracted to men anymore. We're just so tragically unserious.
Yeah.
And any single man left on the market after a certain amount of time is just deemed as damaged goods.
Wow.
I think women just look at it as just like, oh, well, all right, if you're now 27 and 3 women have broke up with you, what would be... And then it just leads to this scramble for, like, the few men that, from their perspective, have been deemed as like, okay, well, this person can be in a serious long-term relationship. But one, that ignores the big thing, was no one knows whether this relationship is good or not, right? So there's this thing of like, okay, well, I think that he's serious because he's proven that he... But the way that we, like, deify marriage and we deify... No one knows what's happening inside people's relationships. You could be a guy who's beating your wife every single night.
Yeah.
And women are sitting there fawning over you because they're like, oh my God, he's... You don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Yeah.
But then it does lead to this just scarcity mentality. And it seems as if we're just going to straight polygamy. Like, if that's what is deemed as being a valuable and suitable man, being a man that has already proven that he can be in a long-term relationship, take care of a woman long-term, we're just going to end up in polygamy.
You know what it is? I think... Let me put my tea down. This might be a hot take. Honestly, I kind of don't think it is, but this might be a hot take. But I think that feminism and eroticism are at odds, because feminism is about equality and eroticism is about power. Yeah. And before, what we wanted from our romantic partnerships with men was this element of eroticism, of, like, you know, like, just sexual, just spice. But with the abolition of gender, and I'm not saying that gender has been abolished, but I think it's something that a lot of people want, myself included. I think when you abolish gender, you draw one big equal sign across all bodies. And that fundamentally kills eroticism.
Because there's no power.
Because there's no power.
Very true.
What makes sex what it is, sexy, is the interplay between the person who is dominating and the person who is being submissive, and just like that, playing on those dynamics. And I think that feminism, gender abolition, just the general push towards equality does make sex less of a thing. It makes eroticism impossible.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I'm not gonna say that we should like abandon feminism in pursuit of eroticism. Like, that's not how I feel. But it's clearly what is contributing to this. We are the most sexless generation to ever exist in the history of man. Gen Z are the generation that has the least sex of any generation. And I think a lot of it has to do with this pursuit of equality that we all want in our relationships. Because unfortunately, you cannot have... And I don't just mean this in a heteronormative context. I just don't think you can have eroticism and equality and feminism and, you know, gender. It's just, unfortunately, we have to choose, and we're choosing equality. And, you know, maybe we should choose that, but that's the consequence. And I think when there is one big equal sign between all bodies, and then we all occupy a space, the erotic drive to pursue someone, to go up to them and be like, hey, can I buy you a drink? Or like, hey, can I, you know, to like flirt with someone from across the room. That does die a little.
Yes.
It just slowly starts to die, because why am I attracted to you if you're my equal? You know, and what you're saying about men being tragically unserious is that, yeah, men have fallen from the pedestal of patriarchy.
Yeah.
And that's unattractive to us.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard truth.
Yeah.
For like women that are attracted to men.
Yeah.
It's already tragic. And it's now even more tragic that we have even less of a reason to be attracted to you, because you have fallen from the pedestal of patriarchy that you were once on. And it's because patriarchy creates weak men. And then now we are no longer attracted to weak men, because what we found erotically enticing about patriarchy was the power dynamic. And we no longer have that, because now you have fallen down in the pursuit of being our equals, but now we don't want to fuck. Where do we go? Where do we go from here?
It was really interesting. We were hanging out with a group of women the other day. And when I hang out with you around women, I am privy to the secret conversation.
Yeah.
The things that men shouldn't hear. The secret things that you talk about amongst yourselves that you wouldn't be caught dead saying in public, right? Yeah. So we're talking to this group of women, and they're like, you know, a little sprinkle of misogyny, it just hits. Like, just a little. At home, though. Yeah. Not in public. The street.
Do not,
never do that to me in public. Yeah. But when we're at home, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah. You know, just, I'll bring you a plate. I'll, you know, and I think what sex should be in a more fair and equal world is this playground for us to get out all the demons, get out all the misogyny, all the power shit. Because if that isn't being channeled somewhere, it will metastasize into something else. And there's something very dangerous about the fact that we're attempting to be the most progressive generation ever. We're attempting to abolish it. And then we're also not fucking. Because that needs to be the place where all of that fucking demonic, insanely archaic caveman, cavewoman bullshit gets dealt with, so that we can go out into the street and be reasonable people.
Yes.
But to attempt to do that without there being any outlet for all of the primal shit isn't gonna end well. Because I think that we make this mistake where, in an attempt to like solidify ourselves as like these progressive people who hold these beliefs, we assume that our bodies have caught up with it. We assume that our bodies and our dicks and our pussies and we have caught up with our idealistic sense of politics or gender or feminism, and that's just not true. Like, your brain will always be ahead of your body, and we want them to be in this perfect unison. Like, every woman wants to have a bell hooks brain and then also a bell hooks brain.
Yeah.
But you might have a bell hooks brain, but you might have a
1950s housewife body.
You might.
My libido.
You might be want a nigga to throw you around the bed. And something we were talking about the other day is what's very confusing for men. And I don't really have sympathy for the whiny, complainy incel shit. But what I do have sympathy for is women are basically in a point where they are both asking men to toss them around the bed and then make it afterwards. And it's like the kind of guy who knows how to gently tuck sheets and fluff pillows. And then also the guy who knows how to like be aggressive in bed, bend you over, slap you. That guy doesn't really exist in one body. They're two different kinds of men.
Kill us. Then take us out right now.
They're two different kinds of guys. And you know, some men find that balance a lot better than others. But I mean, how nuanced is the average person? You know, because there are men out there that will be like, hi, good morning, beautiful. Oh, I made you. And I made the bed and I cleaned the bathroom. That guy exists.
And then I blew your back out.
You know, and he's gonna fuck you with a real like tofu limp dick. And that's gonna be what it is because that's who he is. Right? And then there's the guy who will fuck the shit out of you. And then, you know, he's gonna refer to women as females. And he's not gonna make the bed. And he's gonna leave his underwear on the floor.
No, it's a toxic dick.
And it's this perfect, balanced man. It's very far and few in between. It's also never perfect. You know, you can have a better balance than other men. But in reality, you know, it's sort of one or the other. And I don't think women are delusional in the sense that, oh, he has to make this much money. He has to be. I think the biggest sense of delusion from both men and women is coming from expecting this perfectly balanced person. Because the same thing goes for men, where it's like, we want you to be these progressive feminists that are okay with 50-50 and are okay with like having an equal balanced financial relationship. But then when it comes to the bedroom, it's just like you just bend over and then we just fuck and then I'm the big strong man. So it's like we're also delusional for wanting that. You know, in the same way we talked about like Jeff in the streets, Marks in the sheets. I was literally gonna say. Men want like, you know, bell hooks in the streets, but then fucking Marilyn Monroe in the sheets. And it's like, hey, well that doesn't exist either.
But, you know, I do think I think the abolition of gender is allowing that too. Like, I think that exists in you. You're like a pretty balanced guy. You are Marks in the streets and Jeff in the sheets.
Well, that's because we fuck. And, like, this is what I mean, where it's like sex needs to be the place where you take that out in. You get what I mean?
Your Jeffness.
Right. You know, but if you don't have that, because no one is fucking at all, then it's like that thing never gets to reach this actual balance point because there's no catharsis, there's no release.
So you
but
know,
it's not I don't think it's a stable balance. Like, you know, there will be men and there will be women that are able to balance it better than others. But is it stable to ask someone to walk on a tightrope their entire life? Is that a sustainable thing? And it's like, you know, I slip into one side or the other all the time. You know what I mean? Like everyone struggles with maintaining that balance. I actually just think that might be the ultimate unreasonable request. Not to make a certain amount of money, not that you can't be into talk. It's actually just that I want you to perfectly walk the tightrope between being Karl Marx and being Jeff. And I want you to be this perfectly evolved person that understands women's plight and can see the world through women's perspective. And I also want you to toss me on the bed and fuck the shit out of me like a Viking. And like that's just a very difficult thing to ask someone to maintain for their entire life. And it's a very difficult thing for men to ask women as well. You know, like what a difficult thing to expect from someone all the time.
Well, I think what you're saying is that the only delusional expectation in romantic partnerships is the expectation of perfection. And I definitely agree with that. I think this guy on Instagram, I forgot his page, but he's this couples therapist and he just posts just things about like love and, you know, and he made this post the other day where he was saying, when it comes to the pursuit of a suitable partner, you want to find someone who is just good enough, you know? you're not going to find a perfect person.
I disagree with this.
You're not going to find... So yeah, he's saying, you know, you're not going to find the perfect person. You're not going to find the person who ticks all of your boxes. What you do want to find is the person who was good enough. And people killed him in the comment section. They were like, this is settling. And I read all the comments because I thought it was so interesting. And in the end, I actually I agreed with everyone. I think everyone was right. Like, sure, we shouldn't settle in love. Like, if love is the most important thing in life, and I believe it is, then that shouldn't be something that we settle for. But we also should relax our expectations, because I do think expectations are what make love impossible. There is something dehumanizing about expectations. And I know that sounds insane.
That's very true.
But there's something dehumanizing about forming a relationship with someone and being like, you need to be this and this and this and this and that. And I think one of the reasons we tend to expect perfection from love is because gender exists, and gender is dehumanizing. So if I'm a woman and I'm straight and I'm attracted to men, my idea of what a man is someone who earns 6 figures, who is strong, who is 6'2" and above, who is this. If I have this ideal with this like objective standardized definition of what masculinity is, I immediately dehumanize you when I expect you to fill that ideal. There should be a balance between not settling but being content with someone who is good enough.
I think you're touching on something that I've always thought about this generation, where it doesn't even feel as if we're dating so much as that we're casting. You're not putting out like your standards or whatever. At the root of this like delusional calculator shit is just
we're casting for roles in the theater of our lives.
Absolutely. And that comes from this deep media entertainment view of the world, as opposed to a more present human view of the world. Because when I'm going through the delusional calculator and I'm like, he has to make 6 figures and he has to be 6'9", and what I'm really doing is saying, hey, here is the role of my husband that I have casted in my head when I was 8 and I was watching princess movies, and these are the criteria. And you can show up and audition, and that is what my life will be. My life will be holding auditions for a preconceived role I already had in my head. And I will be judging men or judging women on the basis to which they can fit that. And the problem with that is humans don't know what the fuck they want. That's the real problem with that, is that people have no idea what they want. They barely know themselves, let alone anyone else. And they're looking for love through this criteria, through this casting call. And then when people don't fit it perfectly and they're alone at 40, they're like, well, what happened? It's like, that's what happened. You had this absurdly arbitrary, and by the way, like brainwashed idea of what you wanted out of a partner. And then you didn't get it and you threw a fit like a child, because none of us really grow up. And then you're just lonely. And then I think that this is what I mean when I say like we've normalized loneliness a little too much.
Explain.
There's something very comforting about loneliness. There's no compromises in loneliness. You get to live exactly how you want. You get to leave the dishes out, and then you get and we've basically pushed this culture of like, just be okay with who you are. And that was very necessary for a very long time, because it was a message to people who are struggling with their gender identity, people struggling with their racial you should be okay with who you are. You should be okay with it. I don't know if you should be proud of who you are, because being prideful should come from something that you've earned, something that you've done, something that you've accomplished. And when you just push people to just be okay with everything, be okay with it stops you from becoming who you could be. It stops you from becoming a better version of yourself, a better partner, someone who could maybe be capable of love, someone who could maybe find someone that meets your stand. And it's like, there's a complete contradiction between both this like be yourself, love yourself, unconditional self-love movement, and then also don't compromise on your standards. Because what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
It's just a blatant contradiction where it's like, if you want that guy or you want that, then you might have to be someone who's more emotionally mature.
Interesting.
You might have to be someone who has a bit more going on in your life.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, should I just be completely content with who I am now? Or should I strive? And something I like seeing is there's this trend on Twitter right now where it's like women post thirst traps.
Yeah.
And then men just quote tweet it and say, I gotta make more money.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, you should strive. And that's really what women bring out of men that I think is very beautiful. It's like, become a better version of yourself. Grow up. Yeah. Become a man. Be someone that this woman would be attracted to. Of course, it doesn't have to be as materialistic as money.
Yeah.
But like, you should strive. And I think that when you don't strive, and you settle, your partner actually just becomes a living embodiment of your own failure, and you resent them. So it's like when you marry a woman who's like not really your type, and you just settled because life is a big game of musical chairs, and when you turn 35, the music stops, and you just gotta go with who you got. Now your wife reminds you of your own failure. She reminds you, same for women, your husband reminds you of your own failure. You just wanted a kid and you didn't have that many years left, so it's like, hey, well, I guess he's the guy. And now you're looking at him and you're looking at his stupid son and you're like, I hate all these people. You cannot settle without resentment.
Wow.
They will remind you of your own failure.
That's very interesting.
And the real struggle is, I think everyone already knows what I'm saying. They know that being too comfortable in loneliness is bad, but they know settling is bad, and they know being delusional is bad. And then the question is like, okay, well, what do I do? I'm not supposed to settle. I'm not supposed to just become completely content being this lonely cat mom. And I'm also not supposed to be delusional. And I think the real truth is that, that's because society's fucked. And it's like, it's not your fault individually. We've created this completely atomized world where like love is damn near impossible to find. And, you know, there's bigger problems here that can just be like transcended through you. You know, it's like they really broke the whole world. And we're just feeling it in our love lives because that's the way we personally experience it the most. But like, there's something deeply broken about society right now that's really sad.
Well, I think one of those things is, let's take it back to capitalism. In a profit-driven society where everything is defined not by its usefulness to humanity, but by how profitable it is to humanity, people have also started defining themselves and others in those terms. And that's killed love. That's made love impossible, because now you've completely flattened who you are and your identity and defined yourself or measured your value by how profitable you are in the marketplace, like how much money you personally make in the labor marketplace and how much money you personally spend in the consumer marketplace. And I think by flattening ourselves in those two ways, we flattened everyone else, and then we've made it impossible to have love because two products cannot engage each other. You know, like if we are both commodities and we are no longer human, we cannot engage. There's no relationship to be had. You know?
But there's also another side effect of the flattening, of now that we've all flattened ourselves into these regimented and compartmentalized brands of people. I'm an goth girl. I'm an e-boy. Now it's like you're constantly replaceable because there's so many e-boys. If my type is fucking like Asian goth girls and I'm in a fight with my girlfriend who's an Asian goth girl, and then it's like, whoa, there's a whole other one that I can just find, and it's like
they're on sale,
and they're and we've just flattened ourselves so much to fit into these brands to get acceptance. By the way, that now we've all actually made ourselves so replaceable. You know what I mean? And it's like the only time you can really value your partner is if you really feel like this person's one in a million. I'm not
like
finding,
this is a person.
So you know, like when you fight, you're just like, well, I still love this person, and I can't go find another one. They're so unique.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel that way about your person, you will just fucking leave anytime things get hard, because you're just, the beginning part of any relationship is the fun part. So when shit gets hard and you view your partner as replaceable, you're just going to, of course, move forward to a similar person that's going to give you less problems. And people stay in this stage of like the fun part of relationships because they view their partner as so replaceable, and they never want to get to the hard part.
Well, the reason people can't fathom that relationships can be hard is because we all view each other as commodities. And the purpose of a commodity is to give you pleasure. And at the point at which it stops giving you pleasure, you replace it with another one. Yeah. When you buy a dildo, its purpose is to give you pleasure. And when it breaks or when it explodes inside your pussy, you go and you throw it in the bin and you go and buy another one. And the same with your car, and the same with your clothes, and the same with your phone. And we are now also commodities. Yeah. And we view each other as the purpose of you is to give me good feelings. Yeah. To make me feel good, to make me feel pleasurable, to make me feel loved. And it's because we view each other as commodities. Yeah. And it's interesting that like people just run from relationships the second they get hard, is because commodities aren't supposed to be hard. They're supposed to be thrown away once they start giving you. Once your computer starts giving you a hard time, you go onto the Apple store and you're like, what's new? Yeah. What's the newest MacBook Pro? I want the newest one. Yeah. I don't want the one with this problem. I don't want the one with this amount of space. I want the newest one. And it's interesting, you were talking about loneliness being something that is sort of like self-aggrandizing in a way. Yeah. Because it is. And it's something that I find interesting too. Whenever I go out, I find that like, and this is something that makes both friendship and love impossible, people are incapable of not talking about themselves. Yeah. Like, it's really hard to meet someone who doesn't just talk about themselves the whole time. The whole time. And that too is because of capitalism. Like we're so alienated, and life has become about pleasing the self to such an extent, because that's what consumerism is about. It's about pleasing the self. People are really like obsessed with talking about themselves, because it's sort of the only thing left at this point that affirms that you exist. It's deeply existential. Wow. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Yeah. But consumerist modern human says, I talk about myself and therefore I am. Wow. It's the only thing that confirms this. And like, you go into conversations with people and they talk about their degree, they talk about their job for a lot. People talk about their jobs
like too much.
So, like, really, guys, we need to. I'm gonna call a conference because it's actually a pandemic. Yeah. People firstly talk about themselves, so like they talk about their jobs endlessly, and it's so rare that someone is like, "What about you? What about you too?" Like what, or even like, "What about?" Something that's not us.
Only ever ask you questions about you to size you up. Yeah. Like, what do you do? Yeah. What do you like? Yeah.
Yeah. And something that Eric Fromm, he's this psychologist / sociologist. He talks about this in his book, The Art of Being, which I'm obsessed with and you should go and read immediately. He talks about how the modern consumerist human faces a dilemma. And the dilemma is that he is very lonely. And so therefore he wants to be with other people. The other dilemma is that he hates everyone and therefore does not want to be around other people. And the modern human faces this like paradoxical dilemma of like both being lonely and wanting to be around other people, but also despising people and wanting to be by themselves. And we compensate for this, how do I put it? We compensate for this contradiction with like small talk, with talking about ourselves endlessly. Because when you talk about yourself, you get to be by yourself without being lonely.
Ah, that makes sense.
You get to talk about yourself. You get to like just be with yourself, thinking about yourself, talking about yourself.
Yeah.
But without being lonely, you have the other person there.
Right.
But they're just a placeholder.
Yes.
For the illusion of dialogue.
Yeah.
Because really what you want is a monologue. You want all conversation to be a monologue, but without being lonely. And so the other person becomes just a placeholder for your monologue.
Yeah.
And it's just you talking at someone about yourself without having to even engage with someone else because you hate people.
Yes.
Because you hate everyone.
Yeah.
You don't have to be around people. And you see this with how people like, I love canceling plans.
Yeah.
Because you want plans,
yes.
but you also want to cancel them.
Yes.
Because you want plans because you're very lonely.
Yes.
But you want to cancel plans because you hate everyone.
Yes.
And the way to navigate this paradox, this dilemma, this paradoxical contradiction is small talk. It's to just talk about yourself endlessly.
You know, I was watching this woman make this video about like, what do men even talk about when they're alone? Like all they do is talk about sports. All they do. And she was getting towards something that's actually real, which is that as men under patriarchy, we are conditioned that we are never to be burdensome to our other male friends, right?
Interesting.
We're taught that we're supposed to talk about sports or talk about surface level, small talk-ish things.
Yeah.
Because anything that is emotionally dense, anything that is emotionally potent is burdensome. And the idealistic idea of being a man is being someone who is never burdensome. It is being someone who only gives, who only provides. They never take. Because taking would require receiving, which we've talked about before, makes you feel powerless.
Yes.
For a long time, I thought this was a uniquely like male affliction. You know, I thought that we were the only ones kind of burdened with this curse of patriarchy, of never really being able to have real conversation, emotionally dense conversation.
Yeah.
But I think as women step more and more into that patriarchal world, and as the world just becomes more genderless anyway, now women deal with that same thing of now you guys can only have small talk with each other.
Yeah.
Except instead of talking about sports, you're talking about your curl patterns or something.
Yeah.
But regardless, there's actually like nothing deep there. And I used to think like, okay, well, women probably are doing something different. They've maintained this deep, meaningful connection with each other. But I think it's actually all gone to shit.
Yeah.
I think both men and women have been frozen in this state of like small talk, meaningless, substanceless conversation because of what you said. Because no one really wants to escape the self.
Yes.
You know, I still just want to really, and you can't really get to anything deep and substantive unless there is one, a genuine interest in what the other person is saying, and two, like a genuine vulnerability. Maybe saying things that you're not that proud to say. Maybe saying things that make you a bit uncomfortable about yourself. So long as everyone is trying to maintain this image of themselves, and they're basically only using other people as a means of like verbal masturbation.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not speaking to you. Yeah. I'm like masturbating with your body.
You know what? Like, you know what? I love that you call it verbal masturbation, because something that I also noticed at this party, and just I'm noticing it generally, is that love becomes impossible when we continue to use each other as a means of escapism. And I think when we live in this hyper-consumerist dystopian world, a lot of us really experience like we really experience this like deeply existential, torturous affliction, which is not feeling like we exist, like just feeling invisible. It's something that you know, a lot of middle class people talk about often. And it's also why like social media is such a good solve for that, because our jobs make us feel invisible. The 12 hours a day that you spend working, because really it's 12 hours now.
Yeah.
The fucking 8 to 12 hours a day that you spend at work, you're doing a bullshit, menial, automated job, which is just usually consists of 2 movements. It's just moving this and then moving that, and then moving this and then moving that. And it's like, imagine like being a cashier.
Yeah.
You know, you sit and then you move, boop.
Yeah.
Boop.
Yeah.
Boop. And that's the sound every 8 to 10 hours. You know, the sensory experience of being a human has made us feel as if we are dead, because we're never doing anything. We're never like really alive. Yeah. You know, we're never like, we just like exist in this really dystopian zombie-like state of just like being half asleep at all times, because our jobs are so soul-crushing and menial. Yeah. And whether you sit at a job and you type all day, you know, that's not something that you can do with full awareness, with full aliveness. It's not something that uses all of your senses. It's not something that requires you to be awake. Our jobs are so menial and so boring and so monotonous that they actually literally put us to sleep.
Yeah.
And we exist in the state of being half asleep, half awake at all times.
Yeah.
And that is such a mind-numbingly soul-crushing existence that we actually spiritually don't feel alive. We don't feel as if we exist.
Yes.
And so we have to do things to escape this reality into one in which we do actually exist, and into one in which we do actually matter, and into one in which we do actually feel alive. And that's why drugs are so popular. That's why drug addiction is on the rise. That's why hedonism is on the rise. Just like the endless pursuit of freedom for freedom's sake. Because like we want to escape into worlds where we feel alive.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes use each other as that.
Yeah.
You know, we meet someone and we want the other person to make us feel as if we exist. And we want life to be about us more and more, because we really do worry deep down existentially that we are no more. And in a lot of ways we are no more, because we fused with tech. We're kind of these half human, half robot things that we carry around this phone every day, and we need our gadgets to feel as if we can do things. You know, like in a lot of ways we are dead. Being a human is no more. It's not what it used to be, and we are dead. And this creates this existential dread and this existential fear that we're slipping away from ourselves, and we keep like needing, like we need to escape into new worlds to feel as if we exist. And in those worlds we do everything we can to keep things about ourselves. We take pictures of ourselves, we post those pictures of ourselves, we edit those pictures of ourselves, we then share those pictures on other platforms of ourselves, and then we talk about it, we write about ourselves. Just like life has become so much about ourselves, because we all fear that we are slipping away and dying. Because life is so monotonous and menial that we do really feel invisible and like we are just half dead. And you know, I don't know if love can exist. If that's what life is gonna be.
You know, what you were talking about really reminded me of something I noticed the other day. The artist like Doja Cat, which is like, you know, great. You know, I have no problem with Doja Cat, but she was talking a lot about like, I guess how lonely and dehumanized she feels in the music industry and whatever. And she went on like the red carpet the other day in like a literal like prosthetic like cat face. Like she literally just looked like a Hunger Games character. And I feel like we're just entering this age of like transhumanism, where it's like, are we human? And it's like for a celebrity in the modern day and age to come out and be like, I just feel like no one's treating me like a human.
Yeah.
Are you treating yourself like a human? Because you look like a cat.
Do you consider yourself a human?
Like you're presenting this, and then you expect human empathy when you're either presenting yourself as a god, or you're presenting yourself, and then. Beyond celebrity, I just think we do it as normal, everyday men and women. It doesn't even have to be celebrities, because if every day on Instagram, I'm a man who's always showing you in my nice car, and I'm always like posting motivational quotes, and I'm showing you how much money I make, how would a woman humanize me? I haven't humanized myself.
Yeah.
So when she only views me as a wallet or only views me as an opportunity, how could I be mad? I haven't humanized myself. And the only way to get empathy as a human being is to give it to yourself, and you can't do that if you hate yourself.
Wow.
And I think that's the real root of everything. People hate themselves, and they do all of this in order to become someone that they hate less. And then in that process, they dehumanize themselves because they're striving for perfection. They're striving to be a brand. They're striving to be this idealistic thing that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And then they circle back and complain that no one is humanizing me. No one is treating me like a real person. And it's a really tired, doomed cycle. You know, we're just going to keep repeating this until we can forgive ourselves and humanize ourselves. And then maybe someone can actually treat us like a human.
Wow.
But the second you need to be like a slay queen, perfect beat face, perfect that, no man is ever going to humanize you. The second you need to be like Andrew Tate, here's my car, no woman is ever going to humanize you. You have to humanize yourself.
Is humanization possible under capitalism? Because if who we are required to be to survive capitalism is these like really cartoonish consumers and really cartoonish workers, is it possible to like go back to being human?
Well, I think that...
And what does it mean to be human?
I think that because capitalism is based on a lie and money is a lie that we all agree to keep telling, that means that you can not admit the truth in certain environments. So you're not allowed to be honest at work. That is the agreement at work. When people ask you how your day is going, you're not allowed to say, I want to get a 45 shotgun, put it in my mouth and pull the trigger. I'm not allowed to say that in the conference meeting. I got to go, oh, it's great. Yeah, the kids, we went to Lake Tahoe this weekend. You have to lie. And what people do is they seek control in their romantic relationships because they're not allowed to have it in their professional lives, in their careers. And because you're not allowed to be honest in your career. This is actually the only place I can be a controlling person. This is the only, and it all comes out there. So I don't think that you can be a full human until you can be honest in all spaces. And work is a giant space in our life. It's really a third of our entire waking moments on this planet. And we're not allowed to be honest there. So how could you be a real human if you're not allowed to be honest in a third of your life? And then that also ruins the rest of your life because you're trying to I'm not trying to compensate in my romantic life. And I'm going through your phone and I'm trying to control
where you're
you.
Also not trying to be honest. I mean, you're also not allowed to be honest in your romance because now you have to be a slay queen and then you have to be Andrew Tate.
Well, gender is a
gender is a lie. It like
dishonest.
makes it's like I can't be this thing. None of us can be a gender. And that's the real truth. And like until we accept that, all of society is a lie. Everything is a lie. And nothing is real. And on that note, we thank you for listening. For getting into bed with us. And spiraling about the nature of humanity and gender. So let us know what you think. Are we dead?
Are we dead? Are we delusional? What's happening?
What's happening? What's going on? Are we dead? Do humans still exist? Are we doing transhumanism now? What's going on? Do we hate women? Do we hate men? Are we still doing this love thing?
Do you hate men? That's another, like, do you miss the days when men would try to flirt with you, or you're like, I'm so glad that these niggas keep an arm's length at all times?
Where are you at with flirting? You know? Let us know what you think, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Great episode.
That was my favorite in a while.